Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, Karen is about to be homeless and wants to live with me and my son. A brief backstory. 3 years ago, during lockdown, my ex-wife, Petunia, cheated on me. We have one young son together, and we've been married for 7 years. I tried to work things out, but her mom convinced her she cheated because she was unhappy with me. It was a very high-conflict divorce, and at first, I made a few bad decisions. Trust, letting her have access to our joint bank account. I had a ton of false police allegations against me, and the authorities were called too. So I started to record everything. I walked with a body cam outside. I was utterly self-monitored to avoid allegations. A week after I put up the cameras, I caught her and her family breaking into my house. Legally speaking, she did not get arrested because we were still married, but it does look bad in court. However, I took my lawyer's advice and the custody my state gives fathers. Fortunately for me, she fell in love with someone in a European country and handed away most of the rights to my son. Most, as in I got full custody, but she retained legal custody, like she could pull him out of school or get his medical records, etc. My lawyer said this protected me if we went back to court because she would probably win that before and I would look bad. 1 year later, she's getting divorced a second time and moving in with our mutual friend. The divorce happened about a month ago, and during this time, she has not attempted to visit my son. Side note here, my lawyer advised me to play it cool. Don't antagonize, don't withhold our son. Also, he told me to buy a house. I'm in a position to now, and set down roots to make it harder to take him away from me. Again, our divorce was high conflict, and I was terrified she would try to take him away from me. I'm more than willing to allow her to see our son, and I want to do the right thing and let my son grow up happy. Honestly, that's all I care about. Her history says she's highly volatile, and I'm concerned. Current problem. Here's where I need advice. She wants to move in with us for a few weeks until her YouTube career takes off. I am not insane, so I do not have any confidence in said career. I also question her mental health, for reasons listed below. What should I do? Our mutual friends, a couple with 3 kids, grew tired of Petunia, and for a good reason. They assumed she would do the usual thing, get a job and get back up on her feet. They also work very hard and sometimes struggle to get by. So working 10 hours a day to come home to someone doing absolutely nothing is very discouraging. They gave her a deadline to get out or they would involve legal matters. That deadline is in a few days, so Petunia has decided to call me and ask if she could live with me for a few weeks. Petunia joined some new age religion. There's a lot of details to share here, but I want to leave the tangent manageable. I am religious, so I'm careful to not make fun of other religions. It would not be sincere of me to do so. But it started with a reading that she had, which led to going on to TikTok, and she believes that she is a starseed and an ancient alien who came to spread light to the world. It seems like a mix of paganism, Buddhism, and other spiritual things mashed into one. I'm trying not to rant about reincarnations and talking with aliens here, so I've deleted many paragraphs of the issues I take with. She thinks that she's a chosen being, risen above the masses, and of course, that plays strongly into her ego. Everyone internally wants to feel like they're unique, and believing you are of some royal bloodline feeds into that. Right now, I'm legitimately suspecting mental illness. Our mutual friends tell me that they don't recognize her anymore, and that she's being secretive and not letting them know what's happening. I'm a single dad with 100% custody and 0 support from the other parent. My dating life is also not looking up, but I have a promising career and we get by. I'm incredibly fortunate in a lot of ways. I've been getting a ton of therapy for my codependent behaviors, and I don't need this. She tells me she'll be homeless if I don't take her in. She's not speaking with her immediate family because she moved to another country. If I let her in though, it will seriously affect my mental health. What should I do? I'm leaning towards calling her bluff and letting her figure it out, though it appears she will never get a job. Would the courts hate that? I'm very uncomfortable in this position. Update. I have officially declined. I feel lighter. Like, wow, it's a ton of responsibility I don't have to worry about. I know a lot of you are like, wow, why would you even consider this? You're insane. Yes, I am a recovering codependent, and I also have a very difficult time setting boundaries and saying no. I feel strange even just saying no. But also, I feel much better. Mad with power even. Anyway, she did not respond, but she did leave me on red. Thanks for the energy, guys. I appreciate you all. You would be an absolute fool to let her live with you. It also wouldn't be good for your son. Do not make that mistake. Also, YouTube careers never take off for the vast majority of humans. Am I the jerk for ruining Steve Irwin for my friend's daughter? I, female 38, got to visit my friend recently and spent the night. One of her daughters, who's 13, spent a couple hours watching old episodes of The Crocodile Hunter on TV. My friend said her daughter's been pretty interested in animals and wildlife and nature, so they got her some of those to watch since she remembers enjoying those as a kid, and the modern versions of them don't seem as good. I thought this was great, as I actually grew up near Biwa, Australia, where the Australian Zoo is, and we went a lot, even into my young adulthood before moving to the US for work. Got to see Steve a couple of times, and later Bindi when she got older, at a couple talks and small group settings. My friend said, "Wow, you should totally tell my daughter about that." So a while later, I went into the living room where the daughter was watching the shows, and I told her, I got to see Steve a couple of times before he passed, and later Bindi. And she got excited and started asking me a lot of questions about it. I told her he seemed like a great guy, and as much as I could remember about the animals. Then I told her about a detail about the first talk and small group that I saw him at, where he warned us that he had had to help cover for a zookeeper who called in sick and cleaned out the primate houses right before this talk, and he hadn't taken a shower yet. So we really might not want a front row seat. I didn't listen and got one anyways, and oof, I regretted it. I'm sure it was a great talk and a treasured memory looking back, but at the time, all I could think about was how not to gag. This horrified my friend's daughter more than I thought, as she went, "Ew, he smelled bad?" I was sort of taken aback and said, "Well, what do you think? Being around animals all day, every day." That day was worse than others, I'm sure, but come to think of it, he stunk pretty bad the other time I got close enough to smell him too. So did Bindi for that matter. My friend's daughter is apparently also very into spas and perfumes and smelling nice, and this has put a great damper on her thoughts of working with wildlife, and even her enthusiasm for seeing it through a screen. My friend called me the next day and said, "Of all the things to share with her, did you really have to bring up how Steve Irwin smelled like monkey waste when you met him and distracted you from the talk?" She said that seemed like an inappropriate thing to bring up and also disrespectful to Steve's memory. But I don't think it was inappropriate to bring it up. I think it's a realistic part of the work Steve did and was certainly something that stuck in my memory. If anything, it made me respect the work he did even more. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. She's 13 for crying out loud. This isn't Santa Claus. Her world isn't gonna end now that she knows animals can smell. Am I the jerk for telling my parents if they want to charge me rent, then they need to treat me like an adult? I, 18 female, recently just had my 18th birthday yesterday. It was nothing big. I just went on a shopping spree with my own money. When I came home, my mother and stepfather decided to sit me down and gave me a whole lecture on how I'm an adult now and I need to start paying rent because they weren't gonna house adults for free. Even though my stepdad's 23-year-old son lives here for free, but that's besides the point. They told me that I would start paying $650 every first of the month starting on July 1st. I tried to bring up how my stepbrother doesn't pay anything and it was unfair to spring this on me when I just turned 18, but they responded that I must have the money since I went shopping today. Now, let me tell you, I pay for everything I have. Phone, my car, which isn't under any of their names, my clothes, and even the food I eat because they claim I eat too much even though I don't. So I agreed I would, but then since I was paying for everything I own, they no longer could treat me like I'm a kid. Instead of them looking at me like I'm their kid or stepkid, I would be looked at as a tenant. They no longer could give me curfews. I would be disabling my Life 360, and they no longer could just barge into my room because I pay for it, and they no longer can demand anything from me besides rent on the first of every month. I also told them that if they couldn't follow my rules, since I'm paying rent, then I will go rent a room somewhere else. This started an argument, and they started yelling about how I'm disrespectful and that this was their house, and they didn't have to follow any rules of mine. So I just left. Now I've been getting calls from family calling me ungrateful and saying that my mother could kick me out. So Reddit, am I the jerk? Edit, I just want to add this because a lot of people are asking if I'm still in school. I just graduated high school last month and I will be attending university in the fall. Since it's summertime, I do work full-time, but I'm not sure how university will affect that when the time comes. Another edit, because people seem to think my parents are doing this because I have a bad spending habit. I don't. I've been saving money since I started working. Obviously, I haven't saved all my money because I still had to pay for my car, my phone, and food, but I saved enough to the point I'm getting myself through college with my own money, not my parents'. Also, I'm allowed to treat myself for my 18th birthday. Good for you. Once rent is brought up to an 18-year-old by the parents, The dynamic changes. End of discussion. I hope you can get a place with some roommates in your area. Not the jerk. $650 for one room? Leave now. Cut contact. That is so disrespectful. OMG. Not the jerk. Just to be petty, before moving out, say that you want the same rent stepbrother pays. You two pay an equal amount as adults, or you move. Just see what they say. Move out anyway, of course. Not the jerk. The accidental malicious compliance against world expert. This occurred back in the 70s, and before I start, I want to emphasize I was never stupid enough and will never be stupid enough to use my hidden talent. Background. I was taking an elective criminal forensic, CSI stuff, night course at a local community college. The best part about taking this course was the instructor, which meant an in-depth tour at the U.S. Criminal Forensic Lab where he worked as the question document examiner. Also, since computers were barely introduced into forensics at this time, all handwriting analysis and matching was done by hand, and this instructor was one of, if not the best, in the world. The malicious compliance, as good as I can remember. It was a great course studying many facets of criminal forensics and taking the amazing lab tour. As the course was coming to the end, the question document facet approached, the instructor's specialty. At the end of the class, just before it started, the instructor wrote a paragraph on the board, and we each had 2 sheets of blank lined paper. He told us to write the paragraph, only the paragraph, any way we want on one sheet and then again on the other sheet, trying to disguise our handwriting. You are committing forgery. The instructor left and we all started writing. When done, one student, not me, collected all of the sheets, mixed them up, and took them to the instructor. We all looked forward to the next class where the instructor would present matched sheets, then explain to us why our forgery attempts failed and how he would testify in court to prove it. Because I wanted to go home, I made it easy on myself. For my forgery attempt, I wrote the paragraph in print on one sheet and in cursive on the other sheet, even though we were told that it's a failed way to disguise handwriting. Now for a little background on my handwriting. It's bad. I mean really bad, and I have held pencils and pens wrong since I learned to write. The easiest way to explain it is I write with a closed fist, right-handed. In elementary school, my parents hired a tutor to try to teach me how to write again from scratch, including putting plastic things on pencils to make my preferred grip uncomfortable. It failed miserably. In high school, I had a teacher tell me I would amount to nothing because I had issues writing legibly. Basically, my print is somewhat legible, and my cursive? Good luck. But that should make no difference. Now back to the story. At the beginning of the next class, the normal, happy-go-lucky instructor looked very upset as he walked in. The first words out of his mouth was if anyone played a practical joke on him, he did not appreciate it. The whole class, about 15 students, looked at each other totally confused. The instructor then again tried to get someone to confess, but we all continued to look confused. The instructor calmed down a bit and decided to continue with the class as he would normally have done so. From the stack of papers he was handed at the end of the last class, he picked out the top 2 sheets and said, in court speak, how he deduced that the same person wrote both paragraphs. Then a student would admit it was their failed forgery attempt, and the instructor would continue with the next 2 sheets. When there were just 2 sheets left, the instructor lifted them up for all of the class to see. Looking straight at me, he said he could not testify in court saying the same person wrote both paragraphs. With a scared look on my face, I said both sheets were mine and I wrote both paragraphs. So in front of the instructor and the whole class, I again wrote the paragraph, once in print and once in cursive. The instructor walked away, shaking his head and mumbling something like he had never seen this before. After that, the instructor looked at and spoke to me differently as my classmates created some obvious nicknames for me. The Forger. I got an A in the class and I was very happy when it ended. Some questions. Exactly why I could do this, I have no idea. I figured if I was in school today, I would be diagnosed with some sort of minor learning disability. No, I cannot demonstrate this now. I have not written in cursive in 40 plus years and I'm too old to relearn. Cursive. Think loopy letters all connected together, which thankfully is being forgotten. I did make a new account for this post. In the 80s, I found a career that matched my handwriting skills. Computers. Edit. I saw some debate on whether this is actual malicious compliance. I thought it was in the realm, but if not, thanks to the admins for letting it stay up, even if I unintentionally strayed from the definition. Am I the jerk for having my sister-in-law and her 2 kids escorted away by security because she refused to RSVP? Last week was our daughter's 16th birthday. We decided to go all out on our party for a variety of reasons. This would include a private tour of a place she's wanted to go to, and we rented out a room to have a catered dinner. This should all have been just a smooth ride, right? Enter my sister-in-law. My wife and her sister do not get along. They can keep up a casual relationship for the sake of family, but that's it. It doesn't help that my experiences with my sister-in-law have been incredibly dramatic. She's quick to play the victim and gaslight. Sister-in-law has 2 daughters who are practically best friends with my daughter, so obviously she wanted to invite them. One big issue with sister-in-law and her family is that when it comes to coordinating anything with them, they are unreliable on a good day and like trying to communicate with a blind deaf person who does not speak the same language as you on a bad day. They are never on time, sometimes hours, or in one case, a day late, and will not communicate at all if they're planning to show up. The thing I hate the most is that she will just text you randomly after an event started saying they decided not to come, or show up after they said they couldn't make it. Because my wife does not get along with her, I told her I would handle it. I sent 2 emails and 3 texts, and had a 20-minute phone call with my sister-in-law months ago telling her what we were doing for my daughter's birthday. Because of what we were planning, we needed to buy tickets for everyone and tell the caterers how many they were serving. I needed an RSVP as soon as humanly possible to organize this stuff. She either needed to be on time or tell me she could not make it. I told her if she ghosts me, there will be no tickets for her and her kids. She ghosted me. I didn't buy her and her kids tickets. Sister-in-law and her kids showed up, on time somehow, for the event. My wife was livid, so I handled the situation on my own, and I told my sister-in-law and her kids they needed to leave because we didn't get tickets for them. If she wanted to join us for the tour, it would cost quite a bit to get new tickets, and the caterers do not allow alterations after a certain amount of time out from the event. At first, she tried to say she did RSVP with me, and then eventually started to shame me. Our guide called security, and in the end, she and her daughters were escorted away. The event was great, but my sister-in-law's entire family are blowing up at me and my wife. The event was 2 hours away from sister-in-law's home, and they say it was heartless of me to turn her away after the trip. Along with this, her daughters have now stopped talking to my daughter, telling her that I kicked them out of her party. I explained to my daughter the situation, and she called me a jerk. My wife has told me to ignore her family and that daughter will realize we are not in the wrong. Not the jerk. You sent out emails, texts, and had a discussion over the phone about the RSVP. Sister-in-law is the jerk, and so is the rest of the family that's on her side. Not the jerk. Her daughters are going to end up just like her, acting entitled their whole entire lives. Your daughter may be upset with you right now, but one day she will realize why you had to do what you did. I'm 27 female. My fiance, 27 male, wants more kids after we agreed to only have 1. I, female, have been with my fiance, male, since our 2nd year of college. We've always had very similar life goals, very similar dreams and values. We both wanted to be married before 30, wanted to have successful careers before having kids, wanted to buy a house and settle down, and most importantly, we only wanted 1 kid. I grew up an only kid, and he grew up with siblings, who he has very bad relationships with now, so it was what we both wanted for a long time. We got engaged 2 years ago, but the universe threw us a curveball a few months after we got engaged when I found out I was pregnant. A complete accident. We were in a place in our lives where, apart from the wedding, this was a good time to have a kid. We both had steady jobs, a reliable income, transportation, etc. We decided to postpone the wedding until after our daughter was born. She was born in May of last year, and things were obviously hectic for a while we adjusted to being parents. We hadn't really talked about having more kids at all because I figured she was our one and done. We both absolutely adore her, but that hasn't changed my mind at all. In fact, it makes me more adamant that I only want 1. Since he never brought up the topic, I didn't either, because we were very clear before she was born that we both wanted the same thing. The only time I can think of it coming up was a couple months ago. One of my friends told me that she was pregnant, and I was telling him about how sick she was, and I said, "So glad I don't have to do that again," jokingly. He kind of laughed, but got really quiet, and when I asked him about it, he just said that he wasn't feeling well. Now, we are a few weeks away from getting married, and we decided to go out for dinner last night because we had barely seen each other lately with all of the preparations and parenting duties and such. We hired a babysitter and made a reservation, got dressed up, and went to a really nice restaurant. Dinner was going fine, and we were having a really great time until he mentioned that he had something he wanted to talk to me about. He admitted that he wants more kids, and I was initially shocked, but asked him about it. Why did he feel this way? How long has he felt this way? And he replied vaguely, just kept talking in circles, saying he just wants more. I asked if he wanted to leave the restaurant because it seemed like a more serious conversation, but he was very persistent that we stay. He began talking about this dream he has of having lots of kids, like 6 or more, and plenty of grandkids to be around when we're older, and big family dinners. It kind of shocked me, but I told him plainly that I did not want more kids. I couldn't imagine not having our daughter, but I also couldn't imagine having so many kids that I wouldn't feel like I'd have any time to give our daughter the attention she deserves growing up. I said simply I would not have more kids, and I thought we had agreed on that a long time ago. He said he had changed his mind, but then got up and left the restaurant, leaving the keys. He didn't come home that night, but in the morning he stopped by and grabbed some clothes, then asked me if I had reconsidered. I told him there was nothing to reconsider. We had agreed on this years ago, and he left without another word. It's been a day, and I haven't talked to him since, but he's texted me the address of the hotel and said I can stop by with the baby if I've changed my mind and want to talk about it. I don't really know what to do. He wants more kids, so he bailed on the kid he currently has? He's trying to manipulate you. That alone is enough to call off the wedding, but he also refuses sick days and nighttime wakings. Ugh. Honestly, I'd call him on his bluff and call off the wedding. He'll probably flip out. I've been thinking about this for an hour. Something ain't right. Where does this desire for 6 kids come from? How long has he been thinking about this? And now you can only discuss it if you've changed your mind? I really have to wonder if he's trying to end your relationship in a way that makes him not the bad guy. I feel like something else is going on. Either way, you don't want more kids. There's no compromise here. I'm really sorry. Am I the jerk for doing a chore when my wife asked and then not telling her about it for 7 hours? So, I feel like one of us lacks perspective on this, so I'm hoping y'all can help. My parents are coming to visit us from another state on the 4th of July. I know this always causes my wife stress, just because she wants the house to be spotless when we have people over. Towards the end, we already have a cleaning service scheduled to come in a few days to help get things clean enough so she isn't stressed out. You should also know we have a new puppy, and this thing is in the stage of putting everything in its mouth. Now, normally, we're kind of a bit cluttered. We have people over all the time, and our most common solution to the clutter recently is throwing anything that's even a little unsightly into one of our front rooms. We normally just keep the door shut, and well, out of sight, out of mind, right? Anyway, one of the items in there has been an artificial Christmas tree. For a couple months, we've talked about it a few times as something that we need to take care of. It was always, we need to take care of it. I know y'all don't know my house, but it's pretty difficult for a single person to get an object the size of an artificial tree into our attack. Anyway, yesterday my wife and I go out to eat. Before we order, my wife goes, "Can you just take care of that tree?" I was like, "Sure, I will just need help getting it into the attic." Anyway, after some of the slowest service on record, it's actually pretty late when we're headed home, so I end up telling her I'm just going to have to handle the tree in the morning. Well, morning comes around, my wife reminds me that I said I would do the tree, and then tells me she's going to be outside handling some things. So I get up, handle the tree solo, and clean up some dog mess, because of course. Anyway, then my wife comes in a bad mood, and I'm trying to cheer her up, but I decide not to mention the tree because, I don't know, it seemed like it would make her happier to find out later. Anyway, she just asked me about it, and I told her it was the first thing I did today, but she's mad. She says that she would have been doing other things in there if I had said something. Maybe I was the jerk. Sounds like she handles the mental load. If you knew there was a lot to be done, but only did one thing, you're the jerk. If you were just waiting for orders, you're the jerk. It's your house too. Help her clean without having instructions. You're an adult. Y'all need to be on the same page. Learn to do things without instructions. What has happened to this sub? This grown man needed to be reminded twice in a 12-hour period to put a Christmas tree in an attic in June. And then she had so little faith he would follow through, she felt she had to remind him again. His wife seems to be drowning in the mental load of this relationship. What I want to know is, what was OP doing during that 7-hour period she thought he was doing nothing? What was the wife doing as well? I get the vibe only one of them was continuing to clean and prepare for that visit, and I doubt it was OP. You're the jerk. You knew there were other things to deal with in the front room, and you ignored them and only dealt with the tree. It's not your wife's responsibility to tell you what to do to maintain and prepare a house for guests. You live there, you have eyes, you presumably have critical thinking and reasoning skills. Learn about mental load and stop acting like your wife's junior employee.
Reddit boy, didn't I tell you to take out the trash?
Yeah, I did that hours ago.
Well, you should have told me. Ugh, this mental load is driving me insane.
Am I the jerk for telling my mom I'll never be happy she's doing better by her do-over family? My mom was not active in my life when I was young. She left it all to my dad. He was such a good dad too, and he did his best to make up for my mom never being around. They were married, by the way. She was married to her job mostly, or always doing her own thing. Dad would try to bring us together, but she always had excuses. A year before he passed, I noticed he started to grow more frustrated with her. She had let us both down many times and they started arguing. The day he passed, he was in an accident. He stormed out of the house after Mom accused him of trying to pawn me off on her and how she wasn't some cheap babysitter. After he passed, she was in a real weird place for a few months. I hardly saw her and spent most of my time at my uncle's house, my dad's best friend. She met someone new and dedicated a lot of time to him. I was 11 when Dad passed, had turned 12 when she met her husband. It was obvious how different she was with her second husband. It was also obvious when she had kids with him that she was a more involved mom. She actually went with them to see Santa, took them places, made memories, all the stuff she never did with us or even me. I resent it, I'll be honest. Her husband noticed it before I moved out of their house and called me out on not being happy for my siblings and him. I told him he got everything my dad had begged for, that I would not be happy she let my dad pass unhappy, that she made me unhappy my whole childhood. He called me childish. I told him I don't give a hoot about his opinion or his happiness. I moved out before I graduated and before I even turned 18. I live with my uncle now. It was just better. Ever since, Mom has been like, "Why don't you visit? Why don't you ever call? Why do you never answer texts?" She texted me twice before that point in 3 months. She asked to meet last week, so I did since she was paying. She told me she was doing better by her family now and did not like that I carried such a clear grudge. She said she's doing everything with them to make sure they don't miss her like I did, and I should be happy for her and for them. That she'd like to think my dad would be happy for her. I told her there's no way he would have been happy. She ignored the kid he had with her and did everything he wanted with me for other kids. I told her at the end of his life, Dad probably didn't even love her anymore. Like she clearly never loved us. I told her I will never be happy that she's doing better with her do-over family, that she could take her pawning off and her cheap babysitter self and just stay away from me. She called me spiteful and said I should love my siblings enough to be glad for them at least. She also sent me a text over the weekend saying I'm just like she was and congratulations for being what I hate. Am I the jerk? Also, siblings is because I do not consider them that. They're her kids, but she's not really my mom, so they're not really my siblings. Not the jerk. She may be doing better by her new family, but what is she doing to make amends with you? She's simply trying to get you to give her a free pass. Try not to let this experience hurt the other areas of your life. Seek help if you need it, and move on in a positive way. I'm 46, male. My conversations with my wife, who's also 46, are leaving me confused, exhausted, and downbeat. We've been married for 22 years. I feel that I have to be on guard at all times. Things can go smoothly, but if I'm not highly vigilant, I will say or do something that will devolve into a long and depressing conversation, leaving me confused, exhausted, and downbeat. For example, yesterday, things were going nicely for about 2 weeks. She comes into my office, I work from home, and I stop doing what I'm doing to listen to her. I'm smiling, I'm happy. She asks if I'm okay with her taking a bookcase from my office. I playfully reply, "What will you offer me in exchange?" She says this is manipulation. I say it's negotiation, still being playful, but starting to understand this will not end well. She ends up saying this is not a negotiation, she just needs an answer, yes or no. I move into a practical mode, say yes, and clarify that I will need to move my things, and we agree on a plan, and that's that. There's no real unpleasantness here, just a practical, neutral conversation. I'm fine. I understand that she did not want to be playful in this situation. I feel a little dumb, but I can move past that. But she doesn't. She starts asking me questions about if it's really okay that she takes the bookcase. Why did I say that in the beginning? Why I continued instead of just answering, and so on and so on. I tell her I understand that she wants to clarify the situation and I want to give her proper attention, but right now I have to work, and I suggest that we continue this conversation at some other time. She says that's fair and leaves. Later on, as we're preparing dinner, I say, "You had some questions for me. I'm ready to answer now." She starts asking, but it's entirely different from what she was asking before. Now it's about something other than if I'm really okay with giving the bookcase. It's about why I act the way I act, like why I'm playful when she asks a practical yes or no question. And this is where, As I try to explain myself, things will devolve into a sort of psychoanalysis session. She was a nurse in mental health, where she will jump all over the place, saying she's not judging me, criticizing me, or asking me to change, and then do exactly all those things. You have a gap in your thinking process. You should see that there's a human being in front of you. At many points during this 4-hour conversation, I have to try to clarify what it is that she actually wants to know or accomplish, but I never get a clear answer. I try just listening. You're not participating in the conversation. I try explaining myself. You're justifying and not listening to me. I don't feel understood. I try empathizing. You're just repeating. I try to apologize. You're trying to avoid the subject. And all the while, I cannot get a clue of what's really going on and how I'm supposed to act, as nothing that I do or say while being myself or trying to be an improved version of myself accomplishes anything. I truly want to see her happy, and I'm willing to spend 4 hours talking with her, but the result is negative all around. I'm at a loss as to what I should do now. I went to bed at 9:30 p.m. and I got up at 9 a.m., feeling down, not wanting to see anyone, talk to anyone, or do anything. This is not the first time. I need to know what to do from here. I'm perfectly open to hearing that I'm 100% of the problem. I just need to know my next step. Individual and marriage counseling. Y'all aren't even remotely on the same wavelength. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.